Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Informing Patients and Spare Numbers webinar. The session's going to last about 15 minutes, and there will be time to answer any questions at the end. If you can ask any questions via the chat on the message on the meeting, please, and then we can answer those at the end of the session. Any questions that we don't have time to answer, we'll send out the answers to via the email as we do normally with the recording of the webinar. So your reception team will be asked the same questions and give out the same information many times a day. Surgery Connect can help with answering those questions and supplying the information without the need for anyone to speak to your team. And there's a few different ways that you can do that. So that's what we're going to be looking at throughout this session. So we're going to look at, first of all, at adding new options to any menus that you have and also changing the menu prompt when the patient first enters that menu. We'll also look at the playlists that you can amend whilst the patients are actually queuing to get through to one of the team. And then we'll have a look at spare numbers and creating a recorded information line. And we're going to have a look at all three of those areas in both the Xflow and the service delivery console, and also in the configuration console. So we're going to start off with adding menu options. And first of all, we're going to have a look through the Xflow system. So to access Xflow, if you've got access to it, then you'll be able to access that through either the user console. And if you're in your user console already, if you click on the menu just next to your initials at the top right-hand corner, you'll then have shortcuts to all the other portals that you have available. And Xflow will be one of those via the user console. If you're accessing the Xflow through the service delivery console, you'll need to navigate to the service delivery console and then to the numbers menu at the top of the screen. You can then select the Xflow from the numbers that are listed there. So usually you'll be looking at your main number call flow. By the configuration console, Xflow is accessed through the menu on the left-hand side, and it's just at the bottom of that menu option there. Or you can go straight to the Xflow from the single sign-on window. So once you've logged in, Xflow will also be one of the options that you'll have on the supervisor access. Now, if you've accessed the user console in any other way other than going through our service delivery console and then clicking on the call flow, you'll need to load the call flow once you enter Xflow. So on the left-hand side of the screen is a load icon. If you click on that, it will then give you a list of the available call flows that you can amend. Find your main number and then click load. That will then bring the call flow up onto the screen. So we can see our call flow here. Remember, down the left-hand side, we have icons for anything that we can drag onto our desktop so that we can include that into the call flow. And we're reading the call flow from the left-hand side of the screen across to the right. We want to add an extra menu option so that our patients can get some recorded information. And we're going to look at that around the COVID vaccine information. So within my main menu here, I'm going to double click and that will then open up the properties for that menu. On the first tab on your properties, you've got your usual description. So you've got the name of the menu, the description, how many times that patient is going to repeat if they don't make a response, and how long they have to make their selection once it's been read out to them. To add extra options to your menu, we're going to click on the Visible Outputs tab within that menu property. This then lists the options that we already have available. Now, although we're only using 3 of the options at the moment, we do have a winter flu clinic text that we send out regularly. So that's already set up as an option. And that would be if someone pressed option 4 on the phone. So each of the numbers and symbols relate to the number on the phone that the patient will press to complete that action. If I want to add on another one, I can just put a tick in the box and then give that a name. So it will then appear on the menu on the Xflow. So I've now added option 5 to the menu and called that the COVID vaccine information. I then need to move to the prompt audio so that I can set the speech that's going to be read out to the patient for that particular menu option. So if I click on the prompt audio, I then have the audio that's currently read out where it's just using the 3 options, but I also want to include option 5 on there for the COVID vaccine information. I also want to change what's read out at the beginning of the menu to highlight that option before the patient hears the other options. I can do that just by changing the text in the text box down at the bottom. So here's my new text that's now going to be read out, and my new options, and option 5 has now been added in there as well. You can preview the text to make sure that it reads out okay, and add in any pauses that you need to, just to make sure that it sounds more human. When you click on save, that will then show you the extra output for this particular menu. So we now have our COVID vaccine information on button number 5 on the phone. I now need to tell the system what to do if somebody presses that button. So I'm going to use a prompt, and I'm going to drag that from the left-hand side of the screen onto my desktop. I can then double click into that prompt to customize it and to put in the message. So when I double click into the prompt, I can change the details on this first page here, give it a new name, a description, and whether the patient can interrupt this message. And then I can move on to the audio tab, select the correct voice, and input the text that I want then read out to the patient. Once that's in, I've previewed it and I'm happy with it, I can click on save. So I now have my prompt and my output from a menu. So I just need to join the dots so that the system knows what to do if somebody presses number 5. Once the dots are joined, because I've added new boxes in here, it looks a little untidy. So I'm going to use auto arrange just at the top of the Xflow here to spread this call flow out so it's a little easier to read when I first come into the screen. So it's now slotted in my new prompt in between my groups here. Remember that any changes made to your Xflow will only take effect on your test number. So you could ring your test number now and select option 5 as a patient to hear what that call flow sounds like. When you're ready to deploy that onto your main line, remember to hit the deploy button at the top of the Xflow to swap that onto your main number. We're now going to have a look at adding the menu options through the configuration console without the use of Xflow. So within your configuration menu, you will need to visit the prompt section first of all to create the new prompt and to amend any prompt that you already have for that menu. When you go onto the prompt section, you'll be given a search box, so you can search for the particular prompts that you already use, or you can create a new prompt up at the top. Obviously, we'll need to create a new prompt so that we can give out the COVID vaccine information, the same as we did on Xflow. So I'm going to click on the new prompt there, and that will then create the prompt. You'll then need to go into the menus itself so that you can amend the appropriate menu prompts. Again, you can search at the top. So I've searched for the main menu here because that's the one that we're making changes to. I can then click on the edit to change those prompts within the menu. On the first tab, when I'm editing the menu, I will have my prompt, which is my menu prompt. So that's the one that I changed to notify the patient that there's going to be a new option within the selections. I then need to click onto the button assignment so that I can put in my prompt on number 5 for my COVID vaccine information. Once that's in there, I can click on save, and that will then be active on the menu selection. Next, we're going to have a look at playlists. And again, we're going to start through the Xflow. So I've come into Xflow, and your playlists are in your queues, which are the groups on the Xflow system. So any of the orange boxes will have a queue behind that. So to manage your playlist, if you double click into the queue, that will then bring up the group properties, and we have 3 tabs, and we're going to be looking at the playlist tab today. So I'm going to click on playlist. That will then tell me the playlist that's currently being used when patients are queuing for that particular team. I can edit this playlist, and within Xflow, if I edit the playlist, I can then save it with a different name, so it will duplicate that playlist. So I'm just going to click on Edit Playlist here, and it will then take me into a new desktop that now has my playlist icons on. So currently, if you're in this queue, you'll get your queue position, and then you'll get a piece of music. You can use your playlist to give lots of information to patients. So if you have website or e-consult, whilst a patient's queuing, it's valuable time to actually get those messages across. So to change the playlist to include information as well, I can drag any of the icons from the left-hand side over onto the desktop, just like I would in the Xflow. So if I bring over a prompt, I can then customize that prompt by double-clicking, give it a name and a description, and then click onto the audio tab. Again, here, this is just like doing your prompts on your main Xflow. So you can select the voice that you want to use and then type in the information that you want to give to the patient. There is no limit to how long these can be. So you can put lots of text in here. It will show you the total time to read that out when you preview it. So you'll know how long those sections are. But if you regularly have patients queuing for 5 minutes, then you know that you've got at least 4 minutes of time to fill, that you can give them information in there. Once you're happy with what you've got in there and it's giving the information to the patient, you can click on Save, and that will then create a new prompt on the desktop. Now I want to also add in a little bit more music, so I'm going to drag over the music from the left-hand side and pop that into my playlist as well. So we're now going queue position music, website information music, and then I'm going to loop it around so that it goes back to the queue position at the beginning. I can customize my music too. So if I double click into the music, that will then take me into the tabs for the music selection. And if I click on the audio, I can set that for different amounts of time. So I'm going to click 20 seconds of music there before it then gives them their hold position again. Click on Save. We then need to link them. So we're going to delete the line that goes all the way around just by clicking on the line so it goes red. And then you can use delete on your keyboard to delete that line. I then just need to join up the dots. And then from the end one, we're going to come back all the way over to the front here so that it loops around. I also have auto arrange on our playlist here, so I can make that look a little neater just by clicking on auto arrange, and then it will spread it out so that I can see exactly what's happening. Again, there's no limit to how long you can make these playlists, and you can add in more and more options, anything from down the side here, so that it loops around whenever you want it to. So I now have a new playlist that includes my website information rather than just the standard playlist. If I click Save Changes, it will save this as Playlist 1, which is what it was called before. If I click Save as New, though, it will allow me to rename this particular playlist, and we'll save both Playlist 1 as the original and then this one as the new one. So I'm going to save this as my website playlist because I know it includes our website information. When I click on Save, that will automatically select this particular playlist for this queue. Now, in your other queues, if you have different queues throughout the practice, you can have different playlists on the different queues. So you could actually create a dedicated playlist for that particular area. So if you were talking about appointments, you could give out appointment information during that particular queue. If it was a general reception, you could be giving them the website information. So to change them, once you've saved them, in the drop down on each queue, you will then see all of the playlists that are available. So we still have playlist 1. We also have our website playlist there. And as you create new ones, that list will build and you can then swap the playlists on different queues. Again, remember, any changes that you make are currently only working on your test number if you're using Xflow. So make sure you deploy those changes once you're happy with the way that hold sounds. Within the configuration console, again, you'll need to create prompts before you go into the playlist so that you've got the information there to add in. Once you've created those prompts, go into the playlist section within the configuration console, and you can then create a new playlist. The configuration console will allow you to edit a current playlist, but you can't save it with a different name. So if you wanted a new playlist, you would need to select the new playlist at the top. That will allow you to then build a playlist within the configuration console from scratch. So you can give it a name and then start to set your actions, adding a new action each time that you want a different thing. So you would start with your cue position. You can then have some music in. We've then got a COVID measures message that's going in, then some more music, cue position, building up the cue time, just like that. Within the prompt timeout, within the configuration console, you can alter the time that the music is played for. So the reassure music can be altered here, and we can see that it's gone all the way up to 3 minutes of music there for patients that are on hold for a long time. Don't forget to save the playlist once you've created it. That will then be available, and you can slot that playlist into the various groups. So you then need to go to your groups, which is where your cues are, search for the relevant group, and then change the playlist via the reassurance option on that particular pop-up. Finally, we're going to have a look at spare numbers. So if you have spare numbers within the practice, they could be used as a recorded information line, which you could then give that number out to patients and they can get information without ever having to speak to anybody within the practice. If you're doing this via the service delivery console, you'll need to go to the numbers section, as we did when we were accessing Xflow. When you've got your numbers in front of you, if you then click the unassigned number filter at the top of the list, it will then take out any numbers that you've already got live and leave you with any unassigned numbers there. These numbers can then be made into, as I say, that recorded information line by creating a new call flow for that particular number. So you can either add the new call flow at the top and then allocate the number, or if you can see the number in the list, just click on edit and that will then begin to create a new call flow for you. It will allocate any number that you select within the list, or you can add the number if you're doing a totally new call flow from the drop-down list here. You can then give that call flow a name, and there are templates set up on the system to help build the Xflow for that particular number. When you save the call flow, this is the templates that you can see. So we've got a main surgery call flow here. It is quite a complicated one because obviously it's looking at your main calendar to make sure the number's open. With a recorded information line, you wouldn't really need it to look at a calendar, and you certainly don't need it to go into any groups. Really, all that we want is the menu and the options. But we could build that from scratch. So if I go to the templates, I can then select an empty call flow, which will then give me a blank screen with just my number on so that I can start to build my call flow. When I save that call flow, it will take me into the Xflow and I can then build the call flow. So all I've done here is drag over a menu and some prompts, and then I have set up the menu so that it gives out selections of practice information, prescriptions, appointments, and COVID information. I then have prompts for each one of those. If the patient doesn't select anything, it's going to repeat the menu there for them. Each message tells them that if the call will end after the information. If they want more information, they can ring back. You could always loop it around from the end back to your main menu and then put in your prompt that if they want to select other information, they can hold, and that will take them back around the system so that they could then select something different from the menu, and it could be a totally self-sustaining call flow there for you without any contact with any of your team at all. Now, to find your spare numbers within the configuration console, you'll need to use the services section up at the top of the configuration console. That will then show you the numbers that you have. Anything that is already named, obviously, will already have something linked to it. So we're looking for anywhere where we can see just a telephone number. That would then mean that there's nothing associated usually to that particular number. You can then edit the number that's spare, give that a name, and then create your flow through the configuration console. So setting a greeting message, what action you want that to take, and then your music on hold. Obviously, within the configuration console, if you're going to be building a new call flow, then you'll need to create your prompts and your menu options so that you can then select those through the actions when you're creating your spare number flow there. At the end, just make sure that you save that, and then that number will be live, ready for your patients to be able to use. So during this session, we've looked at adding menu options and changing the menu text. We've looked at playlists, and we've looked at spare numbers.